Hi everyone, welcome back to Spring Into Math 7. I'm Mrs. Campbell, and today we're going to be reviewing what we've learned about rational numbers and taking a look at how they work in real-world math problems. So let's jump in. So the first thing that I wanted to show you was this graph. I really like this graph because it helps you when you're doing word problems to identify what symbol the question is asking you to use or what operation. So for example, if you see the word or the words or phrases, the sum of, more than, increased by, or total, you know that question is asking you to add. You know that the question's asking you to subtract if you see phrases like the difference, less than, decreased by, or subtract from. Those are all words and phrases that indicate that you need to subtract. If the question is asking you to multiply, you'll see words and phrases like the product of 6 and 8 times of, that tells you 3 times 17, 1/4 of 24. That tells you that you need to multiply. And the problem will be asking you to divide if you see words and phrases like the quotient of, divided by, split evenly, and half of. Okay, so it is really important to be able to write an equation when you're doing a performance task, when you're doing a word problem. You have to be able to read the question and create or model an equation to solve the question that they're asking. So let's take a look at this question. It says, a kindergarten class is making clay animals for a play. The teacher has 2 3/4 gallons of clay. I'm going to highlight that so we don't forget that. Each child needs 1/16 of a gallon to make an animal. How many children can make a clay animal? Okay, so essentially the question's simply asking us to divide. It's asking us to divide, or telling us to divide 2 3/4 divided by 1/16. Now, the first thing you want to do is, you've got a mixed number there. You've got 2 3/4, and that's going to be hard to work with. So I think the simplest thing to do would be to turn your mixed number into an improper fraction, which we've talked about previously. 2 3/4 then becomes 11/4, and then divide that by 1/16. Okay, then remember what we learned about dividing fractions. When we're dividing fractions, all we have to do is flip the second number or find the reciprocal and multiply. So step 1 would be to switch the division sign into a multiplication sign and use the reciprocal of 1/16, which would be 16/1. And then multiply. 11 times 16/4. That gives us 176/4. That's an improper fraction. Once we divide, we come out with the whole number of 44. That 44 children can make a clay animal. And another way that you may come across a situation where you're required to make equations is when you're looking at graphs and diagrams and charts. So it's really important that you're able to look at a graph or a chart and create an equation through looking at it. Let's try one of these. The following circle graph shows the 5 most popular snacks for people ages 20 to 24. There were 120 people in this survey. What fractional part, here's our question, important to identify exactly what they're asking, what fractional part of people ages 20 to 24 like fruit? And here's our graph. We've got 1/3 of people liking potato chips, 5/24 pretzels, 5/12 tortilla chips, and fruit, we don't know. That's what we're being asked to solve. Okay, so essentially what we're looking for here is what is the number of people, or how many people prefer fruit. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is we've got to figure out how much of the pie, or how much of the pie graph, this fruit section takes up. So to do that, what we need to do is we need to take the whole number 1, or our entire pie graph, and subtract it, or subtract from the whole number 1, 1/3, 5/24, and 5/12. All these little pieces of our pie. Okay, so that is the whole minus the potato chips people, the pretzels people, and the tortilla chips people. Because subtracting the other parts from the whole 1 is going to leave us with the number of parts that represent the people who like fruit the best. Okay, and from there, it's a simple math problem. We do want to start in our parentheses. We got 1/3 plus 5/24 plus 5 over 12. Remember, you have to have a common denominator when you're adding and subtracting fractions. And we've got it there already. We've got 24. That will work. So what we have to do is multiply 1 times 8. Remember, we always do to the numerator what we do to the denominator. We've got to multiply that 3 by 8 to get to 24. And then 1 times 8. 5 24ths can stay the same. We haven't done anything to that. And then 2 times 12 to get to 24. Again, we have to do to the numerator what we do to the denominator, 5 times 2. And then solve there. We've got 8 24ths plus 5 24ths plus 10 24ths. And that gives us 23 24ths. So we've got our whole 1. Can't forget about that whole 1. 1 minus 23 over 24 gives us, oh, sorry, we have to have another common denominator for that problem too. So we're going to represent 1 as 24 over 24ths, 24 over 24, and then subtract 23 over 24, and that gives us our answer of 1 over 24. That means 1 out of 24 people prefer fruit in this little survey. All right, guys, that just about wraps it up for this review. So glad you stopped by, and we'll see you next time.